The United States Supreme Court in Ambach v. Norwick evaluated whether a state could require public school teachers to be United States citizens. New York law prohibited non-citizens from being certified as public school teachers unless they intended to apply for citizenship. Susan Norwick, a British national married to an American citizen, was denied certification after she refused to seek American citizenship despite being eligible to do so. Norwick sued Gordon Ambach, the New York Commissioner of Education, seeking an injunction to bar enforcement of the citizenship requirement. A three-judge district court panel concluded that the New York law unconstitutionally discriminated against non-citizens. Commissioner Ambach appealed directly to the United States Supreme Court, which had jurisdiction over appeals from any order issued by a three-judge district court panel. The issue was whether the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause permits a state to refuse to employ a non-citizen as a public school teacher if that non-citizen is eligible for American citizenship but doesn't pursue it. The Supreme Court held that citizenship requirements for public school teachers must bear a rational relationship to a legitimate state interest. Writing for a 5-justice majority, Justice Powell concluded that New York's citizenship requirement for its public school teachers was constitutional. As a general rule, classifications based on alienage are inherently suspect and subject to close judicial scrutiny. However, some state jobs are inherently bound up with the operation of the state as a governmental entity. For these roles, a state may exclude, quote, all persons who have not become part of the process of self-government, unquote. Citizenship requirements for these positions need only satisfy the rational basis test. Under this test, the government merely has to demonstrate some rational relationship between a legitimate state interest and the classification. To determine whether teaching was a legitimate governmental function for equal protection purposes, the court examined the role of public education and the degree of responsibility teachers bear in fulfilling that role. Teachers play a critical role in developing students' attitudes towards self-government, as well as their understanding of a citizen's role in society. Teachers exercise wide discretion over how course material is communicated to students. Therefore, for equal protection purposes, public school teaching was a legitimate governmental function. The state, therefore, needed only to establish a rational relationship between the interest it sought to protect and the statutory prohibition against certifying non-citizens as teachers. The court held that the citizenship requirement bore a rational relationship to the state's legitimate interest in furthering the educational goal of preparing students for participation in civil society. The New York restriction was carefully framed, barring only applicants who had demonstrated their unwillingness to become American citizens. In Justice Powell's view, a teacher's refusal to pursue American citizenship suggested that the teacher's primary duty and loyalty was to a foreign nation rather than to America. Thus, the court reversed the district court's judgment. Justice Blackmun, joined by Justices Brennan, Marshall, and Stevens, dissented. Blackmun thought it was absurd, for example, to ban a Frenchman from teaching French simply because he refused to pursue American citizenship. Blackmun thought the New York statutory structure, which permitted numerous exceptions to the citizenship requirement, refuted the majority's logic. Blackmun argued that classifying teaching applicants by citizenship was irrational because it could result in certifying less qualified candidates with citizenship over more qualified candidates without citizenship. Finally, in direct contrast to its citizenship requirement for teachers, New York law permitted non-citizens to serve on school boards. Ambach was one of a handful of cases in the 1970s in which the Supreme Court considered the constitutionality of state discrimination against non-citizens. For instance, in 1973, the court struck down a New York law banning non-citizens from civil service employment. And in 1978, the court upheld New York's requirement that state troopers be United States citizens. Many of these cases involved New York laws enacted during World War I due to wartime hostility against immigrants.